Hello, everyone. I hope everybody's had a horrible, amazing, and wonderful weekend. We have just finished session 7 of the Icewind Dale, and now I'm going to review session 6 and 7 to you guys to show you what's going on, what they did, what they've been up to. If you haven't watched the other ones, you're going to be kind of behind. So make sure that you go and you watch the previous episodes before you watch this one, because again, it will make no sense. Those of you that wish to play this and don't want anything spoiled, this is a good time to stop the video and not watch anymore. There are some scenes that might be a little disturbing, graphic in gore. So I guess I'm gonna warn you about that. It's my fault. It's not the campaign settings fault. When I do certain things, I go a little overboard, but I don't feel bad about it. We'll talk about it when we get there. So let's just jump into it. The party had just fought the Cold Light Walkers, and they had decided to travel along, and they're going to go to the city, Tourmaline, but they're not going to go into Tourmaline. They're going to go north and then go east into the Dwarven Valley. All right, so that's their plan. So they're going along. They have their axe beak and their sled dog boy, and everything's fun. Everything's moving along dandy. Everything's great. And then Grim flies up and does a spot check. Notices a sled full of iron bars go over a rise and down a hill with a big bunch of goblins chasing around it. He flies up a little bit longer and he sees that this sled is going down the hill and it's speeding really fast. It's catching speed, not speeding really fast. It's catching speed, and the goblins can't keep up with it. One in the front actually gets run over and left as like a red stain. And he also sees that they're running toward what looks like a tower pulled by two very emaciated polar bears. He flies back to the rest of the party, lets them know what's going on. And then the party like sleds down some hills and rises, and they kind of like army crawl up to the ridge to see this. And Grim flies into the air as high as he can. And this is where I thought, things are going to get ugly. The goblins are going to die. But that's not what happens. What happens is that Grim flies down and lands on the top of the tower. The tower has a folding door with a crank, and on top of that, there is a goblin standing there, and she's ordering all the other goblins to hurry. And the goblins are trying to like grab these iron bars and like take them into the back of the tower. And the tower's slowly moving. So Grim does what Grim does best, flies down, grapples the goblin. Goblin fails the grapple. She screams. All the other goblins look up and watch as this giant owl man flies away with their boss and lands on the ridge. The party talks to her. They don't really threaten her, but she's also not in a position to argue. But they talk to her for a while, and she promises for her life and the tower that she will give over the iron bars, because the party realizes that these are the iron bars that the dwarves were missing in Bryn Shander. So they talk to the goblins, and they watch the goblins go off with the tower, and they get all of the iron bars, and they do some weight calculations, and they realize that their iron beak or their axe beak can carry it, pull it, and then they go on their way. I was really shocked to nobody took the tower. We'll talk about that later. I was ready for that one. So they're going toward Tourmaline. I expected them to go into the Dwarven Valley, but they already had 2 items for quests, and they were getting a little nervous. So they first had the Summer Star, and they also had what was that called? They had the iron bars, right? So there's 2 quests in another town that they had ready to go, but they hadn't turned them in yet. So they decide to go to Tourmaline. And this is when, in my head, I went, fuck. Because I had not read any single thing about Tourmaline. I had two things planned in the next city that they went to, and I figured I would do them. One thing, actually. And I would do it then, but I didn't think they were going to a city anytime soon. So as they're going to Tourmaline, I speed read as much as I can. I get all the information I can while describing the surroundings and all of that. And they decide the first thing they're going to do is they're going to go to the main part of the city, and that's where they meet Oris Mastu. It's the speaker. He's really obsessed with like trying to figure out the weather. They talk to him for a while. Mario shows him this little device that he has, casts Druidcraft, and predicts the weather for the next 24 hours. Really impresses Oris, and he's more than happy to like help them out in any way that he can for a price, of course. And they negotiate a price, and Oris is like, "Yes, you can store all of your stuff in this special storage area. Here's the key." So they do that, and it's perfectly fine. It's safe. They're able to stable their animals. Well, not Boy. They take Boy with them, and then they know that the east side is the place where they can get a room, and they also know that the Blue Clam is the inn where everybody goes to relax and have a drink. So they go out and they go to the Blue Clam first. And when they get in there, they see a very familiar figure. And it turns out that Venat, the guy that I turned from Gaston, is in there telling the story about how he killed the Plesiosaurus. And everybody's cheering him on. Everybody's buying him drinks. The place smells like spice clam. That's what it smells like. And that's their meal. And they're cheering him on, and the party, they really don't like that. Like, they do not like that at all. And so, Parley does his thing. He asks the bartender. The bartender's name is he's a half orc named Vernon Bragg, and he tells Parley, "Hey, you can help the cook outside. It's in a different place." So Parley goes outside to help the cook. Meanwhile, Gaul posts up beside Venat, and Grim kind of stands back in the crowd, and Mario kind of just like mingles in, right? And he tells, they let him tell the story, and everybody cheers, and Gaul's like, "I need to have a talk with you," and they kind of convince him to sit down. So Venat sits down at a table, Gaul sits on the other side of him, and then Grim comes up behind him, still not being noticed. That's when Mario sits down. And they have a conversation where they discuss what really happened, and then Venat realizes who they are. He tries to stand up, and Grim pushes him back down, presses his thumb into the guy's shoulder, and it kind of hurts him a whole lot. And they kind of scare Venat intensely, enough that Venat promises he'll leave town. He won't say another word. He gets up, kind of runs away, terrified. So Venat is taken care of. And then them knowing that Grim and Gaul and Mario were actually the ones that killed the Plesiosaurus, everybody kind of cheers them on, and they make jokes about Venat. Meanwhile, outside, Parley goes into the small shack, and he sees a man with a wooden leg. Now, this turns out to be Mr. Groat, who got fired in Targos. They have a conversation. Mr. Groat isn't very friendly, but he's like, "Sure, you can help." So Parley makes the stew, and Mr. Groat makes his stew, and Mr. Groat realizes that his stew is inferior to Parley's, and gets mad and stomps off, right? Leaving his post, he knows he's going to get fired. Parley tries to be nice, but it doesn't work. Takes his stew in. It's a hit. Everybody loves it. Feeds him. They really enjoy it. And it's a good time. After a while, after more questioning and all that, they go to the east side. Why did I yawn when I do this? I hate that. But they go to the east side, and the way that it looks is there's a house in the front, right, and then there's numerous houses in the back, and they're just all set up, and they look very pretty. They look very warm and cozy. But the strange thing is there's just wall all around them. There's no door. When I described this to them, they thought there was just no door, and it was actually just an open way. But that's my mistake. They go inside and they find a young teenage girl who looks starved, tired, and scared. Her name's Marta. And they spend a long time learning her story, learning that her father's sick, that they're suffering because the local gem mine is closed. And they feel really bad. They try to investigate the father. They don't know if he's ill or not. They don't know what's going on there. They just know that he's sick. So they just kind of tell her they're sorry. Parley makes her some food, and then they go and they're like, we need a room. And she's like, okay, follow me. Instead of going outside to one of the houses, she goes underground in a passage, and they realize that all of the houses are connected by subterranean tunnels. So you can go and contact the owner without actually exposing yourself to the cold. This was done a long time ago by a big bunch of dwarves that really liked the family before they fell into hard times, and so they really enjoyed that a lot. But yeah, they spend some time talking to her, and it's our sessions usually run from 3 to 4 hours. This one ran about 3 hours and 30 minutes because they did a lot of RP, a lot of planning. So they go in and they sit down and they try to have a few conversations. This is when Parley actually admits to the group because he's afraid that his parents are going to get killed. He's afraid he fears that they're getting close to his parents, and that's when he lets the secret go that his parents are actual Yetis. The party seems to kind of not believe him. Um, Even though he kind of reassures him, he's like, please don't kill my parents. They're vegan Yetis. Please, please, please. And they promise they won't. And then they all turn in for the night. None of them take watch. They don't feel threatened or anything because no one knows they're here. And, I agree with them. And this is the part that if you feel a little disturbed, you can skip this section. But I like to do dreams that mean something to the party, kind of like push them in a direction, or kind of give them a hint, or just play on not the player, but the character's fears, things that drive the character, just to kind of give it a bit of more more kick. So I'm going to go over these really quickly. Grim, what his dream is he sees ahead of him the shapes of like plump caribou rooting around in the snow. As he approaches, he notices that the caribou look up at the sky and then run away. He tries to chase them down, but he realizes that he's running on all fours and he's a lot smaller than he normally is, and he's just really confused. This is when a rabbit appears before him. It's massive, and it asks him to face judgment. And then he feels the shadow behind him, and he turns around in time to see his friend Joy come out of the sky and sink her claws into him because he is now a rabbit. And he wakes up just as he feels his belly like being split open and the warm blood and entrails falling out. Right, so that was his dream. How he interprets that, how the players interpret that, it's up to them. Right. Mario, he's back at the buried treasure in his dream, carrying a covered plate of food to his mother. She sees that Cora smiles at him, and Cora is the one that owned the buried treasure, but her face is kind of long, elongated, and her gums are frostbitten. In his room, he sees that his mother's sitting away from him, with her back to him, and there's no wall or ceiling to the end anymore. It's just the rest of Bremen, and you can see the skeletal remains of the plesiosaurus, but it's not like on the beach. It's actually swimming around, and you can see that she's counting and moving the sky to find the right constellation. And he walks up to her and like pulls the cloth off the plate, and arranged on like some tomato and pearl onions on a bread of fresh lettuce is the wrinkled limp face of his mother, looking up at him. And that's when the hand grabs his arm and he looks up, and it's Gianna, and she grabs this face that's been peeled off his mother's skull and shoves it all in her mouth, bites down on it, blood's running down, and she smiles. And that's when he wakes up. Then Gaul, he's on a boat in his dream. I'm sorry, I have to look at this because it's a lot. In the sea of moving ice, he's watching a mountain really far away explode, and there's a volcano happening. The water ripples, and something moves below, something larger than the boat. He tries to grab the spear in the boat, but it's too heavy. There's a tentacle that flops over, and then another tentacle that flops over and lifts the boat up about like this, and he's over here on this end. He tries to get the crown, but it's too big. The hammer is too hot, and then more and more tentacles pull the boat, and the boat tips up like this. And that's when this half octopus, half face of Shellscar, the dwarven speaker that passed away, that's when his face appears, and he opens his mouth, and the boat tips up, and Gaul falls into the open maw of the creature, and that's when he wakes up. Parley's, he was in a tavern in his dream. There's a man at a table constantly eating. It's first rotten fruit, then rotten meat. Then he couldn't find anything else, so he starts producing these humanoid hearts, Parley does, and making them. And he can't figure out where he's getting them from, but he looks down, and it's all his party members on the floor below him with their hearts missing. And the more and more that he feeds, the more and more the guy demands for food. So Parley has to start taking apart his friends and feeding them to this guy, and the guy keeps eating and keeps eating, and he keeps them the tongues, but nothing works. And then Parley realizes that the guy wants his own eyes, so Parley walks forward and lays his head down on the table, and the guy puts his mouth over Harley's head and sucks out his eyeballs, and that's how he wakes up. And again, dreams are not necessary in D&D, but I really enjoyed writing them, right? I don't believe that every session should have these heavy dreams, but I do believe they're important, just to kind of like establish what they fear as a character or whatever. They can take it as an omen, they can take it as nothing, and sometimes they do. Like, do I think that Grimm read into that? No. I think Grimm goes, I'm a hunter. Why would I not see it in the perception of a rabbit? It's the circle of life, right? There's no meaning there for Grimm except the fact that hunting's necessary and death is necessary. And that's where we ended session, that session 6, I think it was. And I had time to catch up. So at this point, they had 2 quests that they needed to do. They needed to turn in the iron, and they needed to go through the Dwarven Valley to Kelvin's Cairn to save the hiker, Garrett. So, they woke up the next day, start of session 7, and they start having a breakfast, and Grimm leaves the east side and decides that he's going to fly up and see what's going on in town. As he goes, he wants to go eat at the Blue Clam. Outside, they have decided that they're going to leave. They're going to complete a quest. They feel like there's pressure. They feel like they have a lot of stuff just kind of sitting around, and they want to complete a quest. So their plan is to find a boat to go and get as close to Targos as they can. Nope, close to Bryn Shander as they can, and then turn in the iron. The other thing that they're going to do is they're also going to turn in the Summer Star at Bryn Shander, because there's 2 quests they're done. So that's their plan. So they that's what they're gonna do. And Grimm's flying around, and that's when he sees four people huddled in the center of the town, harassing Oris Mastew, the speaker. He lands on a house and watches as the only person that he recognizes is Gianna, the woman that has been looking for Mario and offering 1,000 gold reward. Also with her is a scale mail wearing warrior, looks like a fodder, a tiger tribe, which you don't know what that is. It is a northern barbarian tribe. They call themselves the tiger tribes. They wear the tiger skins, which is Grim Swiftbeak's mortal enemy. And he also sees a very nervous woman standing in the back wearing a solid black Victorian style dress with her hair in a bun. Her fingers are black and she's holding like a black crystal in her hand. And she looks very nervous. So he like looks and sees which is the weakest one. And then he does what Grim does. Flies down, covers the black dressed woman mouth, grapples her, and flies off. Takes her back to the inn. She kind of struggles. She shoots off a few Eldritch blasts. Doesn't work. Throws her down and leaves her with Gaul to question. Parley and Grim go back and they hide on the roof again. And Grim jumps down, leaving Parley stranded up there. Pretty much, Parley can't do anything about it. So they go and they watch as they harass him a bit, and that's when Grim notices that the barbarian's missing too. Um, so he lands down, and with the help of Parley, they scare Gianna and the fighter enough, like threaten them enough that they leave and go to the Blue Clam. And then they help. Well, Grim goes and gets Parley, and then they help Oris Mastew up, kind of try to heal him and stuff. And while that's going on, Gaul questions the woman, finds out her name's Morgana, and that she's just been hired by Gianna to create this party that is supposed to convince Mario what to join them. Right? She wants Mario to be like, "Oh, the people I'm with isn't good enough." So Gianna spent a big bunch of money, and gave them items and all of that jazz. Right? So, for example, the fighter had the barbed cloak in the last session or the last two sessions ago. That if you grapple him, you take damage. Or Morgana had the Cyrosquito. It's a mechanical mosquito that can inject something into people and it flies around and attacks. But Grim takes that from her. And then, they have regular gear or whatever. But she explains it to Gaul, and Gaul's like, "Well, take me to him." So Gaul comes into the center of town and finds out that what's going on. And he tells Morgana, it's best you leave. They have a warm spot for her, and I'm not for sure why. I think it's because she didn't really want to be there. But what they found weird was is anytime that she talked about Gianna, she kind of got this weird look in her eye, like a way too much admiration. So Morgana promises she won't do anything and kind of leaves. And then they realize that the barbarian had taken a key from Oris. So they run back to their storage compartment. They find that the barbarian is trying to take their ore, right? So they attack him. They get the jump on him. They fight him for a bit, and then he runs away. And as he's running away, Grim Swiftbeak hits him with his club, which is a giant plesiosaurus tail. And it's a natural 20 and pretty much just dislocates, like just disconnects the spine from the waist down. So he's not dead. They drag him inside the storage container and they try to get some information out of him, and it really doesn't work because there's a knock on the door, and the captain of the guard, Malik Donsong, is outside with a group of people demanding to know what happened. They open the door, they tell Malik everything. Donsong then orders his men to pick up the barbarian and they carry him away. Donsong says he'll take care of it, and then they leave. So after that, they feel like there's a little bit more danger here than what they thought, and they need to get out. So they go to the Blue Clam looking for a captain. They find a captain. He's eating with a large group of his sailors. They don't see anybody, Gianna, at all. Side note: Gianna calls her group the Bargatsky Five. There were only four of them, but she calls them the Bargatsky Five. So they can't find them anywhere. They see the captain. Gaul goes up to talk to him, and they're having a conversation. He learns that for 250 gold, he'll take them downstream and drop them off because they got to carry the ore and the people. It's going to take a bit, and he's not going to use his big boat. The captain's name is what was his name? I already forgot his name. That's cool. No, it's Captain Jeremiah Coolidge. And the captain says that, he'll do it, but it'll be the next day. Gaul rolls a perception and notices that all of them have a tattoo that he had seen before. It's somewhere on their body exposed. And he asks where they're from, and they say that they're the Targos Trading Company, and that kind of puts him on edge. But he continues to talk. Oris Mastu comes into the Blue Clam, talks with Grim, talks about the captain and how he's kind of not a good guy, how sometimes people will leave with him, but they won't make it to their location. So they get a sense that maybe this is not a good idea, right? So Gaul, without sending out any alarms, is like, all right, I won't do this. They find out that the Bargatsky Five were trying to clear out the mine for 500 gold. 500 gold is a lot of gold, so they decide, why not? But first, they go and they're trying to, like, probably again talk to the barbarian. So they go to the barracks where Captain Donsong is, and they find out that Donsong has arrested every one of the gang, all four of them that he had seen. So they see that the fighter's in there, and he's very grim, just sitting there. Gianna's in there, and her mouth is bound, and nobody knows why. No, they don't ask either. They just assume that it's because she's dangerous when she talks. Morgana's in there crying, and then the barbarian of the Tiger tribe is in there, but he's like dying, right? They tell Donsong their plan, what they're gonna do, and they also decide that they're gonna use the gang somehow to their advantage, because again they're very nervous because they're level 2. And again, I don't pull punches. I'll throw them into a high level place if that's what they want to do. So they're like, well, let's get help from this gang. So in trade for their freedom, they have to help with the gem mine. Donsong agrees, and he gives them the fighter, whose name is Garrett Hems, and Morgana, and says, yeah, sure, here you go. So they then decide, all right, this is a good thing. So they gather up all their materials, and then they start to leave. And that's when Grim realizes he has that mosquito. And part of the mosquito's ability is if that it draws someone's blood, it can tell what kind of poison it is, if the person's immune to a poison, like kind of like the health level of the person. So he goes into the east side and then uses it on the father and finds out that he's kind of poisoned by drinking this water that has like a black substance to it, right? It's the only water they had, and he tells Marta, hey, don't drink the water and don't let your father drink the water. And Marta promises that he will. She'll make sure that they drink something else, or they'll boil the water, like make sure that it's healthy. Then after that, they start walking to the gem mine. The gem mine's like 30 minutes away. And they interview Garrett and Morgana a little bit more. Garrett won't talk much. The only time that he talks is when he talks about killing kobolds. Because he says he specializes in it, and he shows his sword, and it's like a shorter sword, and he's talking about how it's really, really important that this sword be short because he's got to kill kobolds in like tight places. they're a little weirded out by him. But Morgana, tells them that the Bargatski Five is, this thing that they're trying to do just to, be adventurers and help people. And, Garrett agrees with her. And anytime they talk about Gianna, they again look very enamored, right? And they take note of that. They feel like they're being followed. Parley rolls a really high perception and does see a cloaked figure that does go invisible. And then they start moving through beside of a forest. They hear a large noise, and they see after a while this giant ancient dragon, white dragon, fly up out of the woods with a mammoth in its mouth. Doesn't really pay attention to them. They look at it terrified, and then it flies off, probably hunting. They make it to the gem mine. There's a boulder in front. They realize that the boulder is an illusion. Some of them gather helmets so they can see, miner helmets, and light the little candles on the front. And then they go into the mine. And it's one thing that I'd change is that when you look at the map, and I'm not going to show the map, but if you look at the map of the mine, it's sprawling everywhere, right? There's rooms they can miss. There's rooms that they have to go through. And I thought that, I've done this multiple times. I've ran mines before. I've ran maps before. And I don't like sprawling maps. I don't care if it's not real, like conducive, or it's not. So I turned this mine into a straight shot, right? Room after room after room after room, because I felt every room was important. I felt like everything that happened in that mine was important. And sometimes if I don't feel like a room's important, I'll cut it out. There's one room that I didn't put in it that I always put in all of my dungeons, and that's the shit room, where everything takes a shit. You'll see why in a second. I didn't. But anyways, so they go into the mine. The first room leads them down into the first cavern. They see that there's a big bunch of tracks. Turns out there's kobold and giant rat tracks. And they search around, and they see that there's another room ahead of them. But this room is where they get ready, pick up their gear. They find a big bunch of rope. They steal the rope. And then they go into a room. The first room is just glittering gemstones everywhere, right? And they could, if they wanted to, spend a while mining those gemstones to see if they get anything. And of course, before that, I had pre-rolled to see how much they had gotten if they do it. And I was very curious if they would, but they said that they plan to do it after. They didn't want to do it right now. So I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So they go into the next room. This room for 30 feet kind of lowers out, and then they see these natural columns coming down from the ceiling. And then on the other side of those columns are this large river, subterranean river that comes out from underneath the wall and then goes into the other wall. What they also see are two rats drinking the water. So what Grim does is he sticks his head out, shouts something, gets the rats to come, and they surprise round, and they nat 20 of those rats and just kill them instantly. I wasn't expecting giant rats to cause them a problem, so I wasn't too upset. They gathered some rat meat for Parley to cook, and then they went into the room and they found another kobold dead. Or a kobold dead. It looked like it had been chewed up or whatever. But they really didn't mess with the stream. I'm kind of glad, because that stream is instant death, pretty much. Like, if they got in the stream and failed the dex roll, something really bad could have happened. So they go into the next room. They find this is a tinkerer's room. There's gem dust everywhere, and there's a door on the other side. They look around. They don't find much of anything, because they don't sweep the room, but they're not too interested in it. So they open the next door after checking it for traps, because again, they don't trust me. And they see that there's a rickety walkway that goes across this giant infinite chasm that goes down. The river that they had seen actually comes out there as a waterfall that also falls into this cavern infinitely, right? Like, from what they understand, it's infinite. Whether it is or whether it's not, they don't know. They haven't investigated it yet. So Grim decides to investigate as much as he can. So he flies out and flies down. He sees that this walkway is one of two. Sees that the walkway goes this way and leads into another room. There's another room on the second level that leads out and goes this way. And then he also sees like a bucket connected to a rope on the second level that leads down to a small opening on the third level. He's like, okay. So he flies really far into the hole, realizes that this thing goes into the Underdark. And if you don't know what the Underdark is, it's a place, it's like another entire planet underneath the ground. There are rivers, there are lakes, there's continents, there's cities, there's giant beasts. It's a whole nother monster. So Grim gets a little freaked out, flies back up, lets them know what's going on. But as he's flying up, he notices that there are two goblins sawing at the walkway. Um, and he decides to send the mosquito after one. And the mosquito flies over and stings one, and it falls. And that one's name was Thwip, and it falls to its death. Thorpe, or Scorp, that was his name. Scorp tries to grab for him, and then he falls to his death. So two kobolds are dead. Because of the waterfall, nobody hears this happen. He lands up top, tells them what happens, and then they move across the walkway one at a time. And this is when Garrett kind of slips and falls, and on some slime, and almost falls to his death, but they manage to save him. And they finally get across, and they come to a room where there's an elevator that can only hold two of them. So they take turns going down the elevator. Grim, of course, flies down at the end. And then that's when they see an opening to a narrow cave. They go into another part of the cavern, and this is another place where there's glittering gems everywhere. And they really, again, look at it, but they don't they don't do anything with it. They can hear the sound of rushing water on the other side. Parley Rosen is like an investigation or a perception, hears someone moving, and that's when Grim flies up and he sees another kobold hiding behind a cart. And then the kobold looks up, sees Grim, and starts running for the door. And they completely destroy this kobold, killing Sniddle before he makes it out the door. I don't know why they had so many names, but it's fine. So they go into the next room, and there's three long tables. No. That's right. The next room, they open it up, and it's the walkway again, and it leads into another room where there are three long tables. Mugs and plates are all over the floor. There's two kobolds on top poking a dead rat. And they can see there's a large opening where it's like a natural opening where they can watch the waterfall fall out, and then another room on the other side. They roll a few stealth checks. They sneak up behind the two kobolds, and they completely flatten and decimate both of them pretty quickly. There's no hope for them. So that happens. They kind of search around the room, can't find anything again worth taking. They do find that bucket that kind of leads across the vast chasm, but they don't do anything with it. So they find another opening that leads down to a long set of tunnels that become more and more narrow. And this is when Garrett was like, this is my kind of place. So he's been telling Parley stories about how he kills kobolds, and it's always graphic and it's weird. So he goes first down these tunnels, and they're following him, and he slips and falls into a trap. They try to go for him, and they just hear him scream until he's not screaming. That's when they decide we're going to send Parley with 250 foot of rope down this slide, see where he goes. So they lower Parley, and Parley goes down the trap and then goes down into the pit and never realizes that the guy just fell into the Underdark, and they don't know if he's alive or dead or not. Garrick, the Kobold Slayer, is gone. They pull him back up. They take their time, and they go into a room that's narrow, but it expands outward. It's like a 15 by 30 foot room, and it's dark up at the top. And that's when Grim kind of senses something's wrong, right? So he flies up, and he's trying to investigate what is up in that dark thing. I roll an attack, and he's paralyzed, and he's in the hands or the tentacles of a Grail, right? This Grail is a giant brain with a beak and paralyzing tentacles. Um, they try to attack it, and it tries to run away with its prey, and they're successful in damaging it a little bit, and then Gaul hits it with Tasha's hideous laughter, falls on the ground paralyzed, and they beat the ever living shit out of it. Um, Am I upset about that? Yes. A Grell is normally something that would wait until the time was right. I was going to have it wait up in the dark, wait till everybody was out, and maybe grab up Morgana or Parley because why not? And move from there. But, you can't always win. And it's fine. With all the fighting, they come into another room where there are three kobolds. One of them is bigger than the others. This is kind of what he looked like. And the other two are trying to guard him. They intimidate him. They drop their weapons. The two guarding him are what are their names? What? Vought and Zerk. And then the kobold with the wings is named Trex. Grim tackles Trex and finds out that the wings are fake and not real. They have a conversation with him. They realize that Trex is a little smarter than any other kobold, and he promises that he'll help them mine if he'll take them out and not kill him, and let them go free because they can no longer live down in the Underdark. They also noticed that they were messing with this weird skull that was inside the wall and these hands. When they do a detect magic, they know there's something glowing behind the skull, and these wraps on the hands are also glowing. So they take a look at the skull and they realize that it's a illithid skull, a mind flayer skull. They break it open and they find this purple crystal, and then they take the wraps off and they realize that the crystal and the wraps do something, right? They haven't figured it out yet. They usher Trex and his companions into the other room. They promise him food if he gets to mine for an hour. And for an hour, they mine. I'd already rolled for this, so they produce enough gems for about 400 gold. 300 gold, I think, not 400 gold. It takes an hour. During that hour, Gaul identifies the items. He identifies the wraps as wraps of flame, and it's a +1 weapon that when you punch something with a melee weapon or just a melee hand-to-hand thing, you can do an extra 1d6 of damage. But they also realize that this is some kind of item that's dormant, and that it has different levels, meaning that if you do things, it could unlock more abilities. Grim takes those because the player Levi plans on becoming a aspect of the beast, I think, or something like that, where he uses his claws and tail and beak as weapons. So that's really good for him. Unarmed strikes will be really good. The other thing they found out is a psi crystal, and however smart you are is how far you can do telepathic communication. They don't attune to it. Grim attunes to the wraps. And then as they get their gems, they thank Trex, and then they start to go out. And what they tell Trex is this. They tell Trex to go to Bremen. Now, if you remember, Bremen is where Vutu is with his kobolds, but Vutu actually has wings. So Trex agrees that that sounds like a really good idea. Morgana still goes with them. She's been scared this whole time. She did try to fight, but was really ineffective. It was just bad rolls on my part. But it's whatever. So they go back and they go in to talk to Captain Donsong. They realize that the door is hanging open. They go inside and look. The barbarian's throat is cut. Gianna's gone, and so is Donsong. And they go to the speaker, and Oris is begging them to be the captain of the guard there, but they're like, no, we're not going to do that. We can't do that. That's not us. And for some reason, Gaul comes up with the idea of letting Morgana be the captain of the guard. Morgana agrees to it, says she'll clean up the place for Gianna when she comes back. And then that's when Oris tells them, kind of lets them know that Nerth, the leader of Targos, is behind the group, the Bargetsky Five, and also a Donsong leaving. The party decides that after they've been beat a little bit, that they're going to go and rest, and then they're going to deal with the other things later. This is when they level to 3. They finally completed one quest, which was the gem mine. So now they got to complete a few more before they get another level. So they all decide to go to bed, and that's where the session stopped. A few things that I found shocking was, of course, they didn't take the Goblin Tower. I know that they wanted to, but they were also afraid that there were traps in it, which there were. But they didn't do that. But the thing that was really cool is they freed the goblins, and now they know of a place called Karkalok, which is a place where the goblins go. It's far north, so they know that exists. Um, I was also surprised with how they handled Venat. I'm really shocked with that. I'm also shocked that they fought and killed so many kobolds. It's not like them to fight goblins and kobolds so much, but this party's completely different. Like I said, I was disappointed with the Grell fight, but that's only because it didn't get to sneak attack. My plan was to grab somebody, pull them out into the pit with the Underdark, where they would have to figure out how to save their friend while it chewed on him and without killing him at the same time. So yeah, that I think that the encounters went well. I think everything's going well. They don't know what they're going to do, but they have two things they can do. They can go back to Bryn Shander, or they can go on through the Dwarven Valley to Kelvin's Cairn to save the hiker. I don't know which one they're going to do. I don't know what they're thinking about doing, but either way, I'm already prepared. Because I prepared for them to do 3 different things anyways. So we'll see where it takes them. We'll see where it leads them. Again, I'm really excited with how it went. I think that it was great. But yeah, that was how it goes. So until next time, I hate you all. I hope you have a horrible week, because it is Sunday for me here. And keep those D20s rolling, and I'll see you later.